Well, good morning. This is post-election day. I'm Senator Black, now retired, and you're with us on Focus on the News. And Caitlin, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Were you up watching the elections late last night?
Yes, I was. Were you?
Yes, I was. I ended up going out to the watch party for Hung Kao, who was a candidate. He did not prevail, but he put in a great race for Congress in the 10th district in Virginia. So I went out and I've been following the elections and all the excitement surrounding them. Um, anyway, so we'll get right into that and talk about it a little bit. Uh, were you surprised at what you saw?
I was. I woke up this morning a little disappointed. Some people are dubbing today the red puddle instead of the red wave that we were expecting. Um, so there's still a few races that are up in the air. It looks like Georgia, the Senate race in Georgia is going to go into a runoff, so we won't have results for that till maybe beginning of December. Hopefully it looks like we're going to probably take control of the House, hopefully the Senate, but there's still a couple races that we're waiting for the results on.
Yeah, Georgia's a very interesting situation. It's a little bit different because uh, a candidate has to achieve 50% of the vote, and if they don't have 50% of the vote, then there's a runoff. It's a little bit peculiar, but that's the way that they do it, and that, of course, drags out the question about control of the Senate potentially for, like you say, until December. Right now, you've got Warnock and Herschel Walker, and neither of them has 50%. They're very close in their matchup. The percentages are within about half a percent. Herschel Walker is slightly down, but it's just by a hair. So if one of them can't get above 50%, then we do the election all over again in Georgia. So I know a lot of people in this country will be not real excited about seeing that happen, but that's life, and we'll see how it works. They're undecided races. Of course, that one in Georgia, but then there are three others in Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. And so we'll just have to see how that develops. What do you think with the House? What are you seeing there with the House races?
Well, so far it looks like the Republicans are leading in House victories. I think the last time I checked, we have about 200 seats that we've won. Democrats are trailing with around 185, 190 the last time I checked. So that's trending positively for the Republicans. There's just still a few races that we're waiting on the results for to truly make a determination on how the House is going to look in the 118th Congress.
Yeah, I had a question from overseas about what if the Republicans should win by a very small majority? Would that make it difficult to function in the House? And I just pointed to the example of Nancy Pelosi being the speaker when the Democrats only had an 8-seat majority out of 435 seats in Congress. And, she managed to ram through all kinds of things. Now, she had an enormous amount of party discipline. I don't think that the new Speaker of the House will have that advantage that she did. It always makes you wonder how she does it, whether it's with some of the techniques that that you see on some of these shows on TV, where you know something about somebody, and you get their acquiescence because they don't want something revealed about their background or whatever. I'm sure a lot of that goes on in politics at all levels. But have you had a chance to listen to some of the commentary about what happened? Why did it happen? What are your thoughts? Do you?
Right. I've listened briefly to a few people's take on what we're seeing right now. One of the biggest trends that I've noticed and what people are talking about is we're seeing a lot of split ballots, actually, especially in Georgia. There's a lot of people reporting that they voted Republican in the gubernatorial race, but Democrat in the Senate race, or they didn't even vote in the Senate race. So perhaps that has some sort of effect on what we're seeing. I thought it was really interesting. In New Hampshire, also, Republican governor was voted in, but the Senate race, the Democrat candidate won by a landslide. So I think there's a lot of split ballots. Perhaps that has something to do with what we're seeing.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of critique about the impact of Trump and his involvement in the campaign and his visibility and that sort of thing. Have you picked up on any of that?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of Trump-backed candidates did not win their race, and a lot of people are taking that as the Trump era is over, and a lot of people are seeing kind of the writing on the wall and saying that Ron DeSantis is going to be our next GOP nominee for the 2024 election. It is, I think, ultimately the lack of victory and success on behalf of the Trump candidates is going to have an impact on the 2024 election and who our GOP nominee is going to be.
Yeah, it seems to me, I voted twice for Trump, and in fact, when he first ran, I was one of a handful of speakers who would go and speak for him at these huge rallies. I gave the final speech that he gave on election night. I gave a speech before he did. He came out to Leesburg, Virginia, and he had made a swing through 6 or 7 important states, and he just decided to add on Virginia at the last moment. And so I got a last minute call saying, "Oh, we got about 20,000 people down here. Can you come and give a speech?" I didn't have any notes. I didn't have anything written out on a 3x5 card, and I grabbed the wrong pair of glasses. I grabbed my reading glasses so I couldn't see very well at a distance, and so I ran down. Here I am, half blind, stand up with no notes, gave a speech. It actually turned out to be one of my better speeches, and the crowd just went wild. So anyway, I certainly backed Trump, but I think that there's some valid concern that his constant, sort of omnipresent visibility sort of rubbed off a little bit on the candidates, which was good in the primaries, but when you got into the general election, you do have a body of people who just really dislike Trump for various reasons. Virginia tends to have a lot of people in that category, and so I think some of wherever somebody really disliked Trump, it had a tendency to rub off on the people that he was supporting, and I don't mean to be too critical because it's a very dynamic thing. You and I both thought we were going to have a blowout election, and so did most of the Democrat people speaking on NBC and ABC and all these things. It's not that we were out in left field and everybody else was on track. It's everybody was in error. So it's easy to be overly critical of Trump in the aftermath, but he anticipated a huge Republican win. And I think because of that, he was teasing about his announcement for president. And that the timing of that, in retrospect, was not a good thing because it detracted attention from the races. And at the same time, it sort of made it seem a little bit like a referendum on him. And so it seems to me that, right or wrong, I think the election results were a big loss for Donald Trump and a tremendous boost for Ron DeSantis and his prospects as president.
Two responses to that. One, my family and I actually tried to attend the rally you were talking about, you were referencing in 2016 that you spoke at. We couldn't even get in the door because it was so packed. So that's kind of funny. But also, I think there's also something to be said about election integrity when we're looking at these races, just to approach the results with a healthy amount of skepticism, not necessarily denial, but we should definitely be questioning and making sure that every vote was counted. I mean, in Maricopa County, there was a huge debacle going on there last night. People were finding out that their votes weren't being counted. The machines were broken. People were asking if they could take their ballot to another location to submit it. The pollsters would not allow them to do that. So there's a lot of things going on. That's just what we know about. So I definitely think we need to have an eye on that. Also, I think it's really odd that news outlets, especially liberal-leaning news outlets like CNN, not last night, but the night before, were saying things like, don't worry, there are going to be states and races that look like they're leaning Republican, but by midnight, they'll actually start leaning Democrat. That's really strange to say. It's either that or, their predictions are getting better and better every year. So, just a lot to look at, a lot to keep in mind. I think Americans should definitely be questioning and investigating how these elections were conducted.
I think you make a really good point. The only reason that most of us know the name Maricopa County is because I guess it's more famous for voter fraud than for anything else. Or, some people would say just voter controversy maybe, but here they are again. And right in the center of things, a swing state, very important elections being held there. And all of a sudden, I was surprised they call them voting tabulators. I call them voting machines, and I think everybody in the country does. And, liberals are so good at controlling the language, and they know that when you say voting machines, you think about voter fraud. So now they change, these are tabulators. Well, all right, they're voting machines. I don't care whether you call them a tabulator or not, they're voting machines. And, I look at that. I look at also, particularly the election in Pennsylvania, where Philadelphia it's a hornet's nest of fraudulent activity related to elections, and during an election before Obama took office, there were Black Panthers who went and literally stood in the door of the polling place to drive off white voters. And they were armed, and they were standing there, and they weren't there to ensure voter honesty, or that somebody didn't do something crooked or bring fake ballots into the building. They were there to just wallop the hell out of any person with white skin who walked into the polling place. They were prosecuted, they were convicted, and after President Obama took office, he took the extraordinary step of just overturning their, pardoning them or whatever. And anyway, it was not a pretty sight. Well, then they went on, and they were one of the states that shut down their polls and did all sorts of incredibly nefarious things on election night. And so, it does make you wonder how anybody of any demographic could look at somebody like Fetterman, he's obviously mentally impaired. He's tattooed with the, things about murderers and things on his arms. He is one weird, spooky dude, I've got to say. And this is not, I'm not talking about policies that he believes in. I'm just talking about, you would not want to run into this guy in the dark at night. I mean, that's the kind of guy, that's what I'm talking about. I've known some real big hard time liberals that, I could sit down and have a drink with and laugh and, joke around. But Fetterman's, the idea that he legitimately gets a majority of votes in Pennsylvania, it doesn't speak well to the integrity of our system. But that's, who knows? Maybe every vote was legitimate, but that particular election, that really makes me wonder. With the closeness of the elections in the House, there still is a little bit of doubt about the outcome of the House, even though it looks like it'll resolve for the Republicans. There's now some talk about who would be running for Speaker of the House. Of course, Kevin McCarthy has been sort of the heir apparent to the seat, but now there's talk about Steve Scalise. What do you think? Have you heard anything about the possibility of a contest for Speaker in the House?
I actually haven't heard much about who will be taking on the Speaker of the House position. I think Kevin McCarthy is the favorite right now, like you said. I think it would be healthy to have a competition between members and make sure the best man wins. So I welcome any competition to Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, I think it's a very good thing to actually have a contest and let people vote and let them vote in secret. They can cast a vote for whomever they prefer. I think that would be the way to do it. I know there are people who think that it's time for some fresh blood, and Kevin McCarthy was, he's the Speaker, or well, he's the minority leader of the House, and should have a lot of positive influence over the House elections, and they didn't do so well. So we will see. But I wonder how this is going to play out for the Freedom Caucus, for the very, very most conservative members of the House. It's a little hard to tell right now whether they gain lots of power or whether they gain a little power. Mm-hmm. But of course, they certainly would be the ones pushing for for conservative legislation and that sort of thing. So,
Mhm, mhm. I think that the Republicans' biggest, or one of their biggest obstacles, coming up in the new Congress is going to be getting or working alongside Republicans in name only. I think that there is a lot of members who claim to be a part of the GOP, but they do not truly have conservative values. So hopefully, the Freedom Caucus and members of that caucus can kind of rally support with these members and work with them. I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think that's definitely something we need to be focusing on in the new Congress.
yeah, I do think that, the Republican caucus cooperated with the Democrats to strip um, Marjorie Taylor Greene of her committee assignments when she came in. She was very bold, very strong, very outspoken in her positions. And the Republican leadership didn't like that. They didn't like somebody, a strong, independent woman, as they're always talking about. It's all right. It's fine for somebody to be, as long as they're on the left, they can be as bold and independent as they want. But if you are speaking on behalf of families, mothers who are worried about their children in school, people who are skeptical of the COVID vaccine, which I was, and I never had the slightest interest in wearing some stupid mask or getting shots and all of that stuff for what's kind of an annual flu, but a very severe one. Anyway, she spoke out on behalf of these things. Sometimes they would be controversial, but if there's to be freedom, if you're to have a nation that is free, you have to have people who are free to speak. And the Republican leadership cooperated in suppressing her freedom to speak. So, but I think you're going to see the Republican caucus courting Marjorie Taylor Greene and the other members of the Freedom Caucus. I think they're going to gain power. I'm going to have to study a little bit more to figure out exactly how it will work out, where they will gain power. But in the Senate, then we have J.D. Vance in Ohio. He was elected, and I believe he was elected with a great deal of crossover support from the Democrats, who thought, well, we'll put somebody in there who is really hardcore conservative, and then that'll give us a chance to win the election because people won't want to support a conservative. And they're regretting that today because J.D. Vance he's the real deal. He's not just one of these politicians who's in there looking to make good stock investments from insider information, that type of thing.
Right.
Which does go on.
Right. Well, I mean, we definitely need more members like that. I think for a while now, people view the political system in our country is divided along the lines of Republican and Democrat. But I think that there's another way to look at it too. I think that there are politicians and people working in our political system that are aligned either with supporting American values, wanting America to thrive and be strong domestically and on the international theater. And then you have the other side who they're self-interested. They're not necessarily, their number one priority is not the American people and the success of America as a country and a nation. So, we need more people in our political system on the latter side, on Team America. So it's good to see victories like J.D. Vance's in Ohio.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a leader. And because the caucus is relatively small in the Senate, whatever the numbers end up, it's somewhere around 50. he will speak with a big voice, and I know I probably did my most influential work in caucus, where the public never sees it. But now, of course, in the Virginia Senate, it's even smaller, and we had 21 members when I was there, and someone would float some sort of a moderate proposal, or they want to cut some deal with the Democrats, and give them half a loaf, and give the public a quarter of the loaf, and the fat cats take the other three quarters. And I would just I got along with everybody very well, but I was very firm in my positions, and I'd say, we go into the private caucus, I'd say, look, I want you all to know I'm not going to vote for this. Uh, I don't think my voters, my constituents would support it. But moreover, I disagree with it because of A, B, C, D. And you would be amazed. There are a lot of people who maybe they hadn't thought much about it, or maybe they just wanted to go with the flow. But all of a sudden, you'd have a few more voices that would speak out and say, yeah, I've got a problem with that too. And then you've always got the sort of the Johnny come latelys who would, yeah, I think maybe I'll vote against it. And I was able to shape the agenda of the Republican caucus to a substantial degree, in ways that were totally private. I mean, I had one of the most active and successful legislative packages every year, but and those were very visible. But the other things in caucus are invisible. That's where I see someone like J.D. Vance going in, and right now we have Rand Paul, and he's able to voice his position, and there are others, Mike Lee, people like that who are very conservative. But you need someone who is forceful, not in an obnoxious way, but forceful in a way of just jumping on things and getting out there and setting a position, and giving people a rallying point to come in around. And when you do that, it has a big effect. Um, after Trump's, when he first won the nomination, when he was first running, Virginia had voted in favor of him. He got a majority of the votes in the primary, and I was a delegate at the Republican National Convention. And there were some people who were just very intensely against Donald Trump. And there was a fellow who made a proposal, and he said, "Look," he said, "what I think we ought to do when we announce the results of Virginia, typically you say, the great state of Virginia votes so many votes for Donald Trump or whoever's the candidate of the day." And so this guy said, "Well, let's just announce the split. So many for Trump, so many for the other candidate." And I just took a very strong position. I said, "Look," I said, this is going to hurt the Republican Party. There is no advantage in doing something like that other than to undermine the candidate of the party." And I said, I'm not going to support that. And there were a lot of people who maybe didn't think too much, and maybe it seemed kind of reasonable. You have a split, you say this many on this side, this many on that side. But once I took a firm position, then everybody agreed, and okay, let me see a show of hands. Well, show of hands all went one way, and we followed the traditional rule. So you need that kind of leadership, and I think J.D. Vance, even though it's it's a seat that we should normally win in Ohio. So it's not as though we've flipped a seat, but the fact that actually it was the Democrats who managed, they gave him the extra votes that he needed to put him in rather than somebody who would be more watered down in his approach. And I think J.D. Vance is going to play an incredibly important role in the future of the Republican Party. So, okay, with that, I think we'll close out. And Caitlin, we are very grateful to you for being with us. You're always welcome to come back and join us whenever you like. Caitlin Moon has, we've gotten a lot of compliments. I think people would rather look at her than at me, and so so it's very nice having you here, and you give us a fresh perspective as somebody who is a recent graduate and somebody who's headed off, I think, to law school perhaps at some point. And we're just delighted to have you with us. So with
Well,
that,
thank you so much.
yeah. Well, with that, we will close, and then we will be back with you next Monday at 11. Thank you.